Hi, welcome to this week's message. I'm Pastor Horton, and today we're joined by Mr. Douglas L. Correct me if I said that wrong, but
Right.
it is an absolute joy to have you on here. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to meet you and be on your show.
Yeah, absolutely. So we talked a minute ago about kind of who you are, where your journey started. Do you mind just recapping that for everybody to hear? Because it was impactful.
Sure. And if I get carried away too long, you just feel free to cut me off at any time. But as I told you, I grew up an incredible nerdy kid, and I'm still really nerdy. I love science. I went to MIT. I graduated early, double major. I studied theoretical math, and uh, during those years when I was younger, I became convinced that science is contrary to religion. I consider myself pretty much a hardcore atheist at that time. I remember reading in science class something that suggested life started in a dirty pond, and that's actually believed by a lot of people. It's scientific nonsense for so many reasons, but there's this old Disney movie, Fantasia. I like the Mickey Mouse skit myself, but there's one scene where they play Stravinsky's Rite of Spring, and there's this water and lightning strikes it, and life starts up. Uh, Absolute nonsense for so many reasons. But I became convinced if you didn't need God to explain life, then what good was religion? And I became very cynical and very sad, I think. When my son was born and I was in my 30s, my wife wanted to get him baptized. And I think God gave me a gift in that church because he opened my eyes. And looked around and I saw peace and joy. Uh, and I thought, man, you're really missing out on something, Doug. Um, there's something real going on here. So then I told myself that being an MIT guy and a real nerd that you have to find scientific evidence to believe in God. So I've spent the last over 40 years looking for scientific evidence. And the incredible thing, not only have I found it, but it gets more overwhelming every year. I mean, this
Yeah.
nonsense that science is contrary to God, which a lot of people believe, is ridiculous. And that's why I'm delighted to be on your show to talk about it.
Yeah. One of the things that I've heard over time is I've heard that very same thing, and for a while I too was atheistic. And over time I came to faith, and one of the things that I've heard and that I've found is you said you like physics. I'm also a physics nerd. I love the stuff. And gravity is one of those things that's just
Yeah.
so finely tuned that it can't not be by a creator. If it was a little bit weaker, nothing would be able to hold together properly. And if it was just a little bit stronger, nothing would be able to separate. There wouldn't be any, decay of atoms by electron transfer, like none of that stuff. Gravity is such a specifically fine-tuned number that there can't be any reason that's just pure coincidence.
Absolutely. I mean, the numbers are chance of getting it right randomly or like picking the right marble out of a pile of marbles as big as the nearest star. And here's something that's a number with 60 zeros if you want to get really technical. But that's not the only constant.
No.
Uh, there's dozens of these constants that all of them are set. It's like you walked into a control room for the universe, and every single dial is set absolutely perfect. And there are dozens of these dials, all these different constants of physics, the speed of light, the ratio of the proton to the electron, et cetera, et cetera. Um, and this is commonly accepted, yet people still deny God.
Yeah. Another one that I think of is the Fibonacci sequence, which is a, if I'm getting this correct, it's been a little while, but it's a naturally occurring sequence where spirals show up based on the addition of two numbers in a list of numbers. I think that's a pretty simplified way of saying it, but it's this ratio, and you see it everywhere. Like you see it in flowers, in snail shells, in, just all kinds of stuff, and it's incredible to see that because you can't say that's coincidence.
No, no. I mean, the beauty in living creatures, the designs, uh, it's just fantastic. I mean, it used to be, I mean, people have always tried to shut God out, but it used to be considered obvious that there was a designer for life. I mean, so many features. I'll give you a real nerdy one. So scallops.
Hmm.
Scallops have hundreds of eyes, and they align like the James Webb telescope. There's all these different panels, and the scallop focuses on them on something to be able to see. Um, I could give you so many more. I mean, it's just mind-boggling all the design out there. But I mean, as you say, the beauty of shapes. You pick up a book on animals, wildlife, particularly birds. Man, it's incredible. How can you believe it came about by chance?
Yeah. I mean, so I, for a while, believed the evolutionary approach and the scientific creation of the Earth, which says, the Big Bang happened, everything was spread out, things started to coalesce, the Earth was cooling, planets smashed into it, that's where the moon came from, like all this kind of stuff. And evolution, which kind of starts with a random asteroid starts hitting Earth, which cools it down because it was made of ice. And that's where water also came from. And somehow life started from these bacteria. I don't know. And just keeps going on and on. And I mean, it's like reading a really poorly written book because there are just so many plot holes. Like, how do you
Oh yeah.
explain all of these little things happen? Like the pure coincidence of all of these things, I just can't believe that that all would somehow happen unless it was designed to have happened that way.
Yeah, you mentioned the Big Bang Theory, which in a way, I mean, theism is God created the universe. In the
Hmm.
beginning, God created the heavens and the universe. So the big used to be people thought the universe was unchanging, and then about 100 years ago, we said, "Hey, wait a minute, it had a beginning," and there's a lot of science on that. Um, so it's the Big Bang Theory, though, if you read books, you'll think that, oh, there was some almost incredible small period of time. And after that, we know the entire history of the universe and we can figure it out without God. And therefore, we're geniuses. We don't need God. And none of that stuff works.
Oh,
Uh, I'll give you three examples. First of all, this theory is that the dust clouds eventually became stars. Well, actually, dust clouds don't form stars unless there's an explosion that compresses them together. That's a scientific fact. You
yeah.
can't get elements heavier than iron out of stars, so nobody really knows where they came from. And here's one of my favorite. I mentioned the James Webb Space Telescope. That new thing up in sky that's up in the sky that's got all these amazing pictures. Well, they've turned it on the faintest galaxies and galaxies that are receding away very fast. And galaxies that, according to their formulas, came shortly after the Big Bang. And, well, according to their formulas, these galaxies appeared before there should have even been stars. And it's not only that, but the galaxies are fully formed. Okay, so they're looking out at these what they expected to see blobs. They thought, well, there are these gas clouds that got more complex, the usual evolutionary. BS, tried to hide the ball kind of talk, without any real explanation. But that's not what the telescope shows. The telescope shows fully formed galaxies in the distant universe that, according to the Big Bang models, can't possibly be there.
Yeah.
It's absolutely mind-boggling. The Bible says 11 times that God made the heavens and stretched them out. That's what the James Webb telescope shows us. They're fully formed, these distant galaxies.
Yeah. And I think to kind of tie this in with your point about science contradicting religion, I don't necessarily think that a lot of people realize the Bible is written in such a way, but a lot of it isn't taken literally. So like when it says in 6 days God created everything, that's not necessarily 6 of our days. There's a joke that I like to tell when I talk about this, which is, you know, this guy goes to God and he says, God, what is $1 million to you? And God replies and says, it's a penny. And the man says, okay, well, what is 1,000 years to you? Well, it's a day. Okay, God, can I have a penny? Give me a day. And so, I think of that and it's just funny. It's a funny joke. But when you think of it that way, God exists outside of time.
Absolutely.
If if God has the ability to be omniscient and omnipresent, then he has to exist out of time, which
Yes.
means saying God created the heaven and the earth in 6 days, that's not talking about our 6 days. It'd be ridiculous to think that. So when I talk about this, I'll often say, the science behind it says the creation of Earth and species took hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years, however long. That doesn't necessarily mean that the Bible lied or that the science is wrong. It's just a different way than we can perceive it. Would
Yeah, I
that be
guess
something kind
I
of?
would I would argue with you on that, if I may.
Yeah,
I think it's a
absolutely.
literal 6 days, and God, not that it took God is outside of time, but He did it in 6 days and rested on the seventh, so that we would know we're supposed to work 6 days and rest on the seventh. Um, and and this business about millions and billions of years. Um, if you really, there's over 100 areas of science that most people don't know about that show that that's false. And I'll give you, uh, I think, the key one that goes right to the Darwin, it's a stake right through the heart of Darwinian theory.
Yeah,
Uh, so we're built on digital code. You and I were just talking. Okay, we have 3.2 billion letters of digital code in almost DNA. Everybody's heard of DNA in almost every one of our 30 trillion cells, maybe 30 trillion. So fantastic numbers. And we can go, so how did that happen? Okay, but let's just stop there. So every human generation, there's at least 100 errors in the DNA. And they're like typos in the book. Okay, you get radiation, whatever. You call them mutations, but they're spread out among the 3.2 billion letters. And so if you imagine 3.2 billion letters is like a stack of very thick books, 2 columns a page, 1,000 books high. It's an incredible amount. So now you add 100 typos every generation. Now, is the book going to get better? Common sense says no. And actually, when they do the software on this and they simulate this by computers, which they can do now, they have very complex software. The software is called Mendel's Accountant, if anybody wants to look it up. The truth is, all species are going downhill. human beings can't be 100,000 or 2 million years old. We would have all died by now from this genetic deterioration. It's called genetic entropy, if you want a term. So I think the Bible is literally correct. I think Adam and Eve were real people. And Adam sinned, and that's why Jesus came to save us.
Yeah.
So um, and the science on all that is like I said, there's 100 areas of science. If you go to creation.com and search for age of the earth, a big list will come up.
Yeah. Well, I'm definitely going to do some more research into that because, like, I always encourage people to argue. You know,
Yeah,
part of faith is learning. You know,
yeah.
if I didn't pick up my Bible and read it and I just had blind faith, that doesn't mean a whole lot. We're supposed to have faith, but it's also supposed to be an informed faith. And so talking with you and refuting my point, I absolutely love that because that's another way to look at things, and I invite other people to do the same.
Let me give you another example, if I could, Pastor Hort.
Yeah.
So everybody knows there was an ice age. And the only way, there was also, according to the Bible, this one-off event called the flood of Noah. Okay, which I used to think when I was an atheist was nonsense. I mean, the flood of Noah evidence is all over the rocks. Says, the layers of rock. Uh, it's it's how you get an ice age. So there was huge volcanic action going on. People think that God tinkered with the strong nuclear force and everything became very radioactive. Uh, there's all this volcanic activity. The oceans heated up. There was all this ash in the air. And when it was over and the water drained into today's oceans, and by the way, the water was, the Bible says, fountains of the deep exploded. It was mostly under the earth. The You had very hot oceans and you had blocked out sunlight. So the oceans were evaporating and it was cold. And in 100 years or something, you had massive sheets of ice. There's no other real scientific explanation for how you get an ice age.
Oh,
And if you read stuff about it, they'll talk about, well, there's cycles, but none of it really makes sense. It's the Earth's orbit is pretty stable. It's not just suddenly going to go into a massive ice age. So I'm perhaps getting off on a tangent, but I'm just saying there's a lot of things. This is just one of the areas you can look at and to determine the literal truth of the Bible as I see it.
yeah, absolutely. And I encourage everybody to check that out. We are running a little bit low on time, so would you like to tell us about your books?
Sure. Thank you. My newest one is perhaps the one I'm most proud of because it really, I think, fills uh, a need, and that's called The God Proofs. It is a graphic novel, and a graphic novel is not something sexual. It's like a comic book for those who have
Yes.
questions about what the heck a graphic novel is. Okay, it's about 200 pages. There was a great illustrator put it together. I did it with the Discovery Institute, a fantastic group of scientists out in Seattle that study intelligent design in life, and it's aimed at younger people, but it is very powerful, and the reviews are amazing. I mean, it's changing kids' lives, I think. And one my friend at church said, well, his 15-year-old granddaughter said it was below her level. But then I've got other friends. I mean, one's a very successful medical doctor, and he said it was too complicated. So it's there's some, I think it very simply presents some very complex ideas. I've also written a novel called Rise Above. that I'm proud of, that about a very rich man diagnosed with terminal cancer and has a vision, decides to give his money to God, and his kids, one of whom's an MIT math professor married to a Harvard physicist, come and try to tell him that science is contrary to God. So I snuck in all these things, and those are my two most recent ones. I have a website, countingtogod.com, the title of my first book, which I launched with a lecture at MIT, which was a real treat to be able to present the evidence for God at a school like that.
Yeah.
So I know you're short on time, but thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I will have links to all of those for where people can find them in the notes and on the website. Thank you again so much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me.
Of
Very
course.
nice to meet
To everybody else, I truly hope that you learned as much as I did. And I hope that this inspires you to go out, do more research, and learn more. Please remember to like, follow, and especially share this message. Have a wonderful week, and God bless.